He was once the voice that filled arenas, the name whispered with admiration across continents, the kind of performer people believed would never fade. And yet, behind the velvet voice and the standing ovations, there was a life far more complicated than the world ever saw, because Engelbert Humperdinck's story is not just about fame. It is about survival, about loss, and about what happens when a man who once had everything slowly watch his life take pieces of it away, one by one, and the most surprising part, he is still standing, still singing, still refusing to disappear. But to understand how he got here, you have to go back to the beginning, before the fame, before the name, before the world knew him at all. Long before Engelbert Humperdinck became a household name, he was simply Arnold George Dorsey. Born in 1936 in India during the British colonial era, his early life gave no indication that he would one day become a global music icon. There was nothing glamorous about his beginnings, no spotlight waiting, no promise of fame, just a boy growing up in an ordinary world, carrying an extraordinary dream he didn't yet know how to reach. But life had already decided to test him early. Before his career even had a chance to begin, he was struck by tuberculosis, a serious illness that threatened not only his future in music, but his very survival. For many, that would have been the end of the story before it even started, but Arnold Dorsey was not built to stop there. He recovered, and he kept going, even when the world gave him no reason to believe it would ever notice him. A career that refused to begin. When he finally stepped into music, success did not come with open arms. In fact, it barely came at all. He performed under his real name at first, then tried a variation of it. Nothing worked. No hit records. No recognition. No breakthrough. Just a young singer with talent, and no direction for it to land. It was the kind of struggling phase most artists never survive, but everything changed the moment he met a manager who saw something others did not. Gordon Mills, a man already managing rising star Tom Jones, Mills believed Arnold needed something bold, something unforgettable, something that would make the world pay attention whether it wanted to or not. And that is when the transformation happened. A new identity was created, a name so unusual, so theatrical, it sounded almost impossible. Engelbert Humperdinck. Inspired by a German composer from the 19th century, the name was never meant to be normal. It was meant to be remembered. And it worked. The song that changed everything. At first, nothing happened. The world did not rush to embrace him. Radio stations ignored him. Record stores showed little interest. Even the industry seemed unsure what to make of him. Then came a song called Release Me. It sat quietly at first unnoticed, overlooked, almost forgotten. For 3 months, it went nowhere. And then something unexpected happened. A television appearance changed everything. Suddenly, the song exploded. Orders came in by the tens of thousands. Then hundreds of thousands. What had been ignored became unstoppable overnight. Release Me climbed to #1 in the United Kingdom and stayed there for weeks. And in a twist no one saw coming, it even kept the Beatles from the top spot. A new name had arrived in music history, and the world was watching. The rise of a global star. From that moment forward, Engelbert Humperdinck was no longer unknown. He became a sensation. Concerts filled with screaming audiences. Records selling across continents. A voice that seemed designed for emotion itself. His success crossed the Atlantic, reaching America, where he appeared on major television programs and began selling out venues there as well. Millions of records followed. Some estimates place his total sales above 140 million worldwide, a staggering number for any artist, let alone one who once struggled to get a single record deal. But fame, as he would later learn, is never just success. It is pressure, expectation, and silence waiting just beneath the applause, the hidden battles behind the fame. While the world saw success, the reality behind the scenes was far more complicated. The music industry is rarely gentle, even to its biggest stars. and Engelbert found himself caught in legal disputes, industry rivalries, and creative conflicts that often left him fighting battles no audience ever saw. One of the most unusual conflicts came from his own stage name. Descendants of the composer whose name he had adopted took legal action, arguing that it should not be used commercially. In certain regions, he was even restricted from performing under the name that made him famous. Imagine building an identity the world recognizes, only to be told you cannot use it everywhere. But that was only one of many challenges. Another came from rivalry, especially with Tom Jones. Both managed by the same man, both rising in the same era, both competing for similar audiences. Comparison followed them everywhere. Competition quietly shaped their careers, and tension lingered behind public smiles. Even success could not erase it. Missed chances and closed doors. There were moments in his career that could have gone very differently. Songs he almost recorded, opportunities that slipped away at the last moment. One of the most famous examples involves Strangers in the Night, a song later immortalized by Frank Sinatra. Engelbert had recorded it, prepared it, but lost it before release. Moments like these became part of his story, what ifs that never left. Still, he continued forward, because in music as in life, you rarely get every door to stay open. Fame, failure, and public humiliation. Even at the height of his career, setbacks followed him. In later years, he attempted a return to major competition through Eurovision. It was meant to be a celebration of legacy. Instead, it became one of the lowest points of his public career. He finished near the bottom, a legend of music suddenly judged on a scoreboard that showed no mercy. But even in disappointment, he did not walk away bitter. He called it an experience and moved on. Because by then, Engelbert Humperdinck had already learned something most artists never do. Fame is temporary, but resilience is not. Financial struggles behind the curtain. Despite selling millions of records, financial complications followed him throughout different stages of his career. At one point early in life, he reportedly won a significant betting pool prize, only to lose it because he could not afford the cost of claiming it. Later came business failures. Companies tied to tours faced liquidation. Debts accumulated, and reputations were questioned. To the public, he remained a star. But behind the scenes, the reality was far more fragile than anyone expected. It is one of the great contradictions of fame. You can be world famous and still vulnerable to collapse. The greatest love of his life. But none of those struggles compared to what came next. Because while fame tested his career, life tested his heart. At the center of Engelbert Humperdinck's world was his wife, Patricia. They married in 1964, and she remained by his side for more than half a century. Through fame, through setbacks, through everything, she was not just a partner in his life. She was the foundation beneath it. But slowly, something began to change. She was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, a condition that does not simply affect memory. It takes it away completely, and Engelbert began watching the woman he loved disappear in front of him. Not suddenly, but gradually, day by day, year by year, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. A love that outlived memory. Caring for her became his full-time reality. Touring stopped being long journeys. Life became restricted to short distances. Music still existed, but it no longer came first. Love did. He once described how performing love songs began to hurt differently, because every lyric reminded him of someone who was still physically present, but slowly slipping away. Eventually, in 2021, Patricia passed away, after 56 years of marriage. The loss was not just emotional, it was foundational, the kind of absence that does not replace itself. And for the first time in decades, Engelbert Humperdinck was alone. The weight of loneliness and time. After her passing, life changed again. The stage remained, but everything around it felt different. A house once filled with shared memories became quieter, still filled with history, but missing its most important voice. And yet, even then, he did not stop, because stopping was never something he learned how to do. The unexpected return of fame. In a twist few could have predicted, a new generation discovered him decades later, through streaming platforms, through television placements, and through viral moments online. A song once released decades earlier found new life. Millions of younger listeners began discovering his voice for the first time. To them, he was not a memory. He was new, and suddenly, Engelbert Humperdinck was not just a legacy artist, he was a viral rediscovery, the final chapter, or not. Now, at an age most performers long since retire, he continues to perform. Tours still happen. Music is still being recorded, and yet there is always the question lingering in the air. How long can it last? He has spoken about final tours, about farewell performances, about stepping away. But somehow he never fully does, because for Engelbert Humperdinck, music is not a career that ends neatly. It is part of who he is, a life that refuses to fade. Today, his story stands as something rare, not just a tale of fame, but of endurance. A man who lost fortune and still rebuilt, who faced rejection and still returned, who experienced love so deep it defined his existence, and loss so profound it reshaped it. And yet he continues, still singing, still creating, still reaching for something just beyond the horizon. Because some artists do not retire. They simply continue until the music itself becomes their final goodbye. And Engelbert Humperdinck is not finished yet.